Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today I've got a tag for you, the Stranger Things tag created by Brad Proctor. If you're into horror fiction and you don't follow Brad Proctor already, then you should definitely check out his channel. So there'll be a link to his channel in the description for this. So Brad covers a really wide range of horror stuff, from the kind of the big names to smaller independently published authors, and he's always got something interesting to say. So definitely check out his channel if you don't know him already. So yeah, he created this Stranger Things book tag a little while ago based on season 4 of Stranger Things. He was kind enough to tag me in his original video, so I had a couple of tags queued up, so I didn't manage to do this last week, but really keen to get to it now because the questions are really interesting. I have to confess, I haven't finished watching season 4 of Stranger Things yet. My wife and I have got up to the final episode, but it's so long we just haven't managed to find the time to watch it yet. And I'm one of those people, I hate watching things in bits. I want to watch the whole thing in one go. So we need to find an evening where we've got 2 hours 20 minutes or whatever it is, so we can get through the whole thing. Anyway, let me get on with the questions. There are 8 questions. So I will dive into them now. So question number 1, the Upside Down, an alternative dimension that exists in parallel to our own world, inhabited by deadly predators. Name a fantasy, sci-fi, horror, dystopian world you would not want to get stuck in. So the one that immediately sprung to mind for this is from a book I haven't even read yet. So I've got a copy of it, but I haven't managed to get around to it. But I find the concept, completely chilling, but also completely fascinating, and I really, really want to get to the book soon. So that book is Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Bazterrica. If you don't know, it's a kind of near future dystopian novel about a world where all of the animals have died out and humans are farmed for meat. And it's supposed to be a very frank and, kind of complete, if you like, view of that world. So talking about people who work in the factories and things like that, as well as more typical dystopian kind of characters. So yeah, really, really keen to read it. I think it's one of those concepts which is so horrible because it kind of almost feels like it could happen. I don't think it actually feels like it could happen. As I say, I haven't read the book yet. But it's a lot closer to our reality than a lot of dystopian fiction, I think. So it's a bit easier to imagine yourself actually living in. Okay, question 2, the Hellfire Club, an unpopular and misunderstood group of nerds who are more than what they seem at first glance. I have to confess, when I was at school, so like the UK equivalent of high school, I would definitely have been in the Hellfire Club. The group of guys I hung out with at school we were all massive nerds. We played Dungeons and Dragons. We were into horror, like the whole thing. It's nice that it's kind of cool now to be like that, but unfortunately that coolness came 30 years too late for me. Anyway, name a book that you think more people would enjoy if they give it a chance. So I know I talk about this series of books on the channel or not, but they're so good and you really should read them. So that series is the 87th Precinct series by Ed McBain. So a series of 55 police procedural novels set in what is clearly supposed to be New York, but is never referred to as New York. He started writing them in the 50s, finished them in the early 2000s. They're just brilliant. Brilliant mysteries. They've got nice kind of comedy woven into them. They've got great, continuing story arcs about some of the characters. There's loads of kind of subtle politics and things like that in there. They're just a wonderful series of books, and well worth reading in my regard. And a series that is criminally underread nowadays. So in the kind of 50s, 60s, 70s, they were really popular, but nowadays they're only available on through one of the publishers that Amazon owns, and they are not even all of the books are actually in print nowadays. So well worth reading. I think Ed McBain is one of those writers who deserves a lot more attention nowadays. I think he's absolutely fantastic. Okay, next question then. So Dungeons and Dragons. The Hellfire Club is ready to take on Vecna and his minions in the climactic final battle of Dungeon Master Eddie Munson's campaign. Name a book series that you would like to see adapted into a game, and this can be a board game, tabletop RPG, video game, etc. So I think for this one, I'm going to go again with the series I have talked about on the channel before, but I think it's a wonderful series, and that's the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers. So the series that started with the book The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. I just think they're wonderful books, and I think the universe she's created in those books, which is wonderfully rich and diverse and interesting, would make a great setting for like a free roaming like sci-fi RPG adventure type game. So something like No Man's Sky, which is a game my son plays a lot and absolutely loves, and I've played a few times and really enjoyed. I think something like that, but with the kind of cultural aspects that Becky Chambers invests her worlds with, would be absolutely brilliant. So I would love to play a Wayfarers game. Okay, question 4. Worlds apart. 11 Mike, Dustin, Hopper and the rest of the gang are spread across the globe. It's never a good idea to split the party, especially in a boss fight. Name a favourite bookish group of unlikely heroes. So my one for this goes way back to practically my childhood. So I think I started reading these books when I was 11. And that's the Belgariad series by David Eddings. So a lovely fantasy series, 5 books in the series, and they're not massively long like some fantasy series are nowadays, about a young guy called Garion who lives on a farm, and in classic, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the kind of hero awakens type trope. He gets wrested out of his farm and travels with this kind of strange group of very diverse characters. There's like a kind of sneaky thief. There's a big Viking type character. There's a wizard. all these kind of characters who all work together to take on this massive threat that's threatening their world. And it remains one of my favourite series of books about a group of characters who come together as a kind of found family. And I think it's partly because of when I read it, because I read it in, Garion comes to age in the books, and I read it when I was coming to age as a teenager. But I just think it's a fantastic series of books, and I love all the characters in it. Okay, question 6 then. Right, this question, you kind of have to put on a bit of a California accent for it, and I just can't do that, so I'm just going to read it straight, so apologies. So question 5, pineapple pie. Argyle recommends you slap some juicy pineapple on your pie. Oh, fruit on pizza is gnarly, you say? Well, Argyle says, try before you deny. Name a book that you weren't sure you'd like, but are glad you decided to read anyway. So my choice for this one is a book that took me, I think, 3 or 4 goes to read, but in the end I loved it, and that's The Secret History by Donna Tartt. So it's a book that when I was at university was really, really recommended to me by a couple of people whose opinions I respected, and I tried to read it at the time and failed. I had a copy of it, so I tried it a few years later and failed, just couldn't get into it. Tried it again, failed, couldn't get into it. And then eventually it got picked as a book club pick for a book club I was in at the time. And I thought, right, this time I've got to read it, even though I just couldn't get into it before. And I tried it again and I loved it. I think it's such a brilliant book, so rich, so much wonderful detail, so much kind of insight into the human condition. I just thought it was a fantastic, fantastic book. So really glad I persevered and managed to read it in the end. Okay, question 6. Vecna. Using telepathic abilities, Vecna is able to delve into one's mind, exposing their hidden guilt. Name a favourite fictional book villain with cool, otherworldly, supernatural abilities. So one of my favourite villains is Randall Flagg from The Stand, and he does appear in some other Stephen King books as well. I just think he's a fantastic character, and I think he really gets into the root of a lot of what Stephen King is writing about, which is like the abuse of power. So Randall Flagg, if you've not read The Stand, is kind of the Lord of Darkness, if you like, in that book. So he assembles a group of people, and he manages to, his ability is he can kind of prophesy a bit, and he can also persuade people. He's got, fantastic powers, like sort of supernatural level powers of persuasion, and can get people to do what he wants. And I think that's a theme that comes up again and again in King's books, that kind of abuse of power by politicians and people in power. And I think Randall Flagg is a great example of that. So I think he's a really good character. Okay, question 7. Running Up That Hill. Kate Bush's 1985 song Running Up That Hill plays non-stop on Max Mayfield's Walkman during season 4 of Stranger Things, and has risen up the charts since the season debuted. Name a genre, subgenre or trope that you would like to see gain popularity. So my favourite trope, and this can be in almost any kind of book that is trying to be suspenseful and exciting. So you can do it in adventure type books, you can do it in horror, you can do it in sci-fi, and that is like isolated locations. So locations where the the main characters are cut off from the rest of the world for some reason, and I think that just really amps up the peril, because you know that there isn't a way for them to easily get assistance, and I think that's one of the reasons why I tend to dislike domestic noir suspense novels that are so common nowadays so much, is because they tend to be set in domestic settings. It's like all you need to do is walk out the front door and tell someone what's going on, and the authors have to come up with really convoluted reasons why the characters can't do that, which I think always just feels really artificial. So I love it when a writer just takes the characters, chucks them somewhere where you know they can't get help, and then just lets the story run. I think it's a really, really effective way of building suspense in a story. Think of like the Overlook Hotel in The Shining by Stephen King. That's a fantastic example of it done well. I think it's fantastic. I pretty much always love stories that use that. Okay, final question then is for Chimes. Not everyone is fortunate enough to survive encounters with denizens from the Upside Down. Name a fictional book character whose death absolutely broke you. And then in brackets, spoilers ahead. So there are... The problem here is, by even saying the name of the book I'm going to talk about, it kind of becomes a spoiler, because if you haven't read the book, you wouldn't expect a character to die in it. So feel free to skip ahead a little bit if you don't want to have around a book you may never have heard of spoiled for you. Anyway, that book is not a horror book at all. It's all crime or anything like that. It's One Day by David Nichols, which is basically a romance about this couple who are friends, who kind of have an on-off relationship, and just about what happens in their lives. But the ending of that book features something so completely out of left field, so completely unexpected, that I found it like literally devastating. It really, really shook me. I really was broken by it for at least a day or two, I think. So yeah, I'm not normally that affected by things like that in books, but it was quite something. Okay, time for me to tag some fellow booktubers to have a go at this tag. So apologies, I'm not 100% sure if all of these people watch Stranger Things, and also not 100% sure if they haven't done the tag already. I don't think any of them have done the tag, and I think they do all watch Stranger Things. So anyway, the people I'm going to tag are Alice at Alice and the Giant Bookshelf, MJ at Reading This Life, and Gareth at Book Songs and Other Magic. So hopefully, if you see this, guys, you fancy doing the tag, but if not, no sweat, obviously. Right, time for me to grab a random book from the shelves. So today's book is from the Men's Adventure Library Journal, Cuba, Sugar, Sex and Slaughter, edited by Robert Deas and Wyatt Doyle. So this is a fantastic collection of stories and articles and illustrations from the kind of men's adventure pulp magazines of the 50s and 60s, with a particular focus on Cuba. And they've laid things out in this book like chronologically, so you get to see the kind of attitude to Cuba in the pre-Castro years, in the early part of the book, and then kind of through the revolution, and then in the kind of post-revolution years. It makes for a really fascinating read about America's treatment of Cuba, and how Cuban society and Cuban communism was viewed in the States. So it's also got fantastic illustrations like these. So yeah, a really, really interesting book, some good articles and some really fun stories as well. Okay, thanks for watching. Do let me know in the comments if you got your own answers to any of those questions. Hope you're enjoying Stranger Things Season 4 as much as I have been, and hopefully you've completed it, unlike me. But yeah, apart from that, as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well. Hope you're really good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.